I continued on with this eating disorder for a while, and we ended up moving to the States, and I was preparing for college, and so I traveled a lot, and it was very hard for me because people would notice that I had lost a significant amount of weight, and I was really embarrassed, so I would wear like layers and layers of clothes so nobody would know. And my birthday came around, it was in June, and I honestly was scared to death at this point because I had no control over myself. And I remember writing in my journal, and I found it in here, and I just talk about how I was scared because I hadn't had my period since January. And, you know, that's obviously not normal, and I was really scared with that. My hair was starting to fall out, my nails were becoming really brittle, and I was becoming really thin. I didn't look well at all. I was very pale. Um, like my eyes were sunken back into my face, and my skin was very coarse. Like it had no youthfulness or liveliness to my skin at all. And I remember writing in my journal that I was scared, and another scary thing to me was my weight at the time. Honestly, this might sound weird saying this, but according to doctors, um, for my height and my body like frame, like I have a really small body frame, but for my body frame and height, I am supposed to weigh 105 pounds at minimum, like bare minimum. But at the time, I remember writing in my journal that I was scared because I weighed 85 pounds. And it was so scary for me because I could, I didn't really have much strength, but I didn't want to acknowledge that. So it was hard for me, and I would say things started getting the worst in late July. That's when things just completely fell apart. I'd been doing this for almost 6 months now, and it was just, I couldn't do it anymore, but I wanted to stop at that point, but I couldn't. I just completely lost all control over myself. And there was a part of me that was crying for help. It was just, I just wish someone would help me, but at the same time, I was so scared to ask anybody because it was like I didn't know who to trust or who would judge me, or obviously people saw there was something that I was facing at this time, but nobody wanted to take the initiative to actually, you know, stop and realize things and listen to me and what I had to say. It was always, you're not eating enough, or you're not doing this right, or you're not doing that. It was always something wrong I was doing, and that didn't fix the problem because that's how I had started into this. And I remember thinking, and actually I wrote this in my journal, that, um, you know, the whole point to anorexia is not about food. It's not about how much you eat or how much you don't eat or how much you weigh. It honestly comes from a deep longing within to be loved and to be accepted for who you are. And I really thought that during that time, and that was something I really wanted for myself, was just to be accepted and to be loved. But in July, everything started to fall apart. I started to have these things that would just really scare me. I would black out in my room, and what would happen was it would be like, say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'd be really tired, so I'd be walking around in my room, and I would lay on my back on my bed and just look up at the ceiling. I never fell asleep, which is the scary thing, because I know I didn't, because I never actually woke up. But a couple hours later, actually a lot later, my mom would come check on me to see if I was okay, and I'd, walk around a little bit, and she often thought I skipped dinner on purpose because she thought that I was, not trying to eat. By then, obviously, they had caught on that I wasn't being what I used to be, or wasn't doing anything that a normal teenager at that time would do. And so she thought I would skip dinner on purpose, but honestly, I had passed out in my room, and when she had found me, or when I had come to my senses, it was like 9 o'clock at night. So sometimes I would pass out in my room for like 5 to 6 hours at a time, and honestly, I would have no idea what happened to me during those times, or what I was doing, or where I was even, and it would scare me because I would think, this is the end. After I would wake up or come to my consciousness again, I would realize, oh man, this happened again, and I would be so scared because I would think, this is the end, you know. And my hair started to fall out, and I was getting really weak, and it was just really hard for me to concentrate on anything. I was always so jittery and scared and nervous and tense. And September rolled around, and I went to college, and I was really scared and honestly in no shape to go to college at all. But to this day, I'm very glad I went when I did. For me, it was an escape from my family, an escape from my dad, and a lot of the things that he would say to me that I honestly probably couldn't have continued on living for very much longer if I had lived in that situation. But I went on to college, and I was very weak. It was very hard for me to even get to classes. I was very slow when I walked, and I didn't talk to many people. I just didn't have the energy, and I was always tired, and I didn't really like bubbly, exciting, energetic people because they would just wear me out. And I would go to class and just kind of sit where I sat and not really talk to anybody, but I met a lot of wonderful people, and I honestly think that's what played a big part in changing my life. I didn't have people staring at me wondering where my bones were going to come out of next. I had people looking at me in the face and smiling, and that made a very big difference in my life. And I just want to thank you guys, whoever you are out there, whoever smiled at me ever. Thank you, because you made a big difference in my life. And I I went there with no intention of staying, really. I just didn't know if I could make it or not. When I got into my college dorm, I weighed 78 pounds, and honestly, I was too weak to do anything or to, be involved in any kind of activities like sports or anything. I just couldn't really do them at that time. But I met a lot of wonderful people, and I actually went to a Christian college. And at that time, it was kind of like my parents made me go because they thought that this was like my last resort for me to ever heal or change from the terrible person that I was. But uh, for me, like, I didn't really care what kind of school I went to or anything, but I am very glad I did go there, even though I didn't agree with everything that the rules and stuff, but I was very thankful for the people that I met, each individual peoples that was there. And at that point, I didn't really believe in God or anything, and I had lost pretty much all my faith in anything that was considered religious. And I had studied so many different forms of God, I guess you could say, and I won't really get into that right now, but I had looked into a lot of things like that. Well, I was there for my first semester, and we had these required, we were told to attend church on Sunday morning, so I did. And I listened to a lot of Pastor Jackson's sermons. He was the preacher there at the time, and my first semester, his messages were about dealing with your feelings. And for me, that was like, okay, what is this? But his first sermon of the school year was about how to forgive your parents. And for me, I was like, I don't want to, but like as I listened to him talk about it, it made a lot of sense. And something stirred up inside me where I was like, I need to let go of this. So I started to forgive people. I started to forgive my dad. I started to forgive my mom for the things she had said to me. And then he started going through like every person in your life that could ever have wronged you, like maybe siblings or friends, and just people that may have abused you or hurt you. And I had a lot of people in my past that had hurt me in some way, you know, guys that had broken my heart, or I actually had a piano teacher that molested me when I was 11 years old till I was 13. And I tried to tell my parents, but they didn't actually believe me because they thought she was just kidding or she was just goofing around with me and I was taking it a little too seriously. But there was a lot that went on during that time, and I was just really embarrassed and really scared. And I, to this day, have a hard time, like, picking up an instrument for myself. Like, that really scares me. Like, I'm okay with it, but I would never do it as a profession or living, because it just brings back so many bad memories. But I had to start forgiving every person that had ever wronged me in my life, and for me that was a big deal, and I didn't know where to start. And I started praying, and I started praying and asking God to show me who these people were. And every day I would remember someone, and I would forgive and forgive and forgive. And finally, he talked about forgiving yourself. And for me, that was the biggest step I think I ever took, because this whole time I had thought that I was supposed to hurt myself and injure myself, and I wasn't supposed to ever love myself for who I was, because I would sit there and see myself in the mirror and see myself with this, sunken back face and the pale white skin and um, this completely underweight body that just didn't even look human anymore. And I would sit there and look at myself and cry, because no matter how many clothes I tried to layer on and coats I tried to wear, when I saw myself without all the accessories and all the etceteras that was added on, I would see myself for who I was. And sometimes it was even more than I could bear, even just looking at myself.